Waiting for a few more people to virtually check in. Is that right? Marcus? We got 2 coming virtually?
Yes, I believe Rocky's on the phone, and I believe we do have a quorum right now if we want to start.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll call the Tuesday, October 6th, 2020 meeting of the Fargo Planning Commission to order. Approval of the order of agenda. I'll take a motion, please.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any discussion first of all? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The minutes of the September 1st meeting are in your packets. I'll take a motion for approval.
I'll move to approve.
It's been moved to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Vote, please. All in favor? This isn't them.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay. Brown bag lunch tentatively for October 16th, but on another note along that, some of my comments today is due to the fact that our meetings lately have been running, an hour to an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes, we thought maybe instead of having brown bags, that we might have a mini, say, training session after our agenda is complete, with the LDC recommendations coming out late this fall. Mark and I talked the other day about possibly just doing some mini sessions at the end of our meeting and then not have a brown bag. Whether we talked about PUDs, CUPs, other terminologies, and items that might be coming up in the LDC diagnostic that would be helpful for all of us commissioners in when they start presenting their information probably in December. So if that sounds like a doable possibility, Mark?
Yeah, I guess maybe it might be a good opportunity to be able to talk about what we want to do for brown bags or after planning commission's agenda as far as what topics we want to talk about. I know there are some things queuing up for brown bags geared towards the city commission level as far as work plan and engineering has some things, but we also have some MetroCog things that probably need to be vetted through some sort of a brown bag process. So we are getting a little bit jammed up between city commission and planning commission for brown bags. I think one of the biggest questions is, what's the interest and the availability of people attending. I think in the past we'd put together a lot of work on the brown bags and we'd have little attendance and that's probably not as constructive as it could be. But I do see an opportunity with the recommendations of the Land Development Code diagnostic coming down the chute here. I do see an opportunity to maybe try to go over existing Land Development Code and better understand some of the decision-making processes as outlined in that code, so maybe we are a little bit better prepared to work with LWC on the diagnostic recommendations and identify a smoother path as far as what we want to go in the future. So I know that was kind of a lot of words there, but we're definitely willing to listen from the Planning Commission what they want to hear and see and when they want to hear and see it. And then we can process that a little bit and get back to you.
When we get done with the agenda items today, I may just take a straw poll amongst the commissioners to see if they think this idea has some merit, as long as we've got you here. to turn it into a little bit of a educational session at the end of it, so.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Well, I kind of like the brown bags, and I also like the idea that I know that I'm coming to the planning commission meeting and that it'll end fairly soon. You know, it's less inviting to think about the planning commission meeting and then another meeting after that. But one of the things that, Mark, it might be of interest because we've had a lot of different kinds of brown bag meetings. And I think many times the commissioners don't know, the qualitative value. And so if it were brought up as something that's significantly important for all of the commissioners to understand and be ready to go forward with important information, that might be an incentive for attendance.
I guess I would be interested in maybe understanding what the group thinks is that qualitative important topic to talk about. And that could help steer us towards an agenda to do an education session or some sort of presentation.
Well, we can touch on this at the end of the meeting. We'll proceed with our meeting today. There will not be a brown bag on October 16th. Items 2A and 2B, the proposed planned unit development at 1425 Main Avenue has been withdrawn by the applicant. So there'd be no action on that today. And that's it. A couple of the presenters will be virtually. Kylie will be doing one, and so will Cindy Gray. So moving on to item 1 on the agenda, the continue the hearing on an application requesting a conditional use permit to allow an alternative access plan for parking reduction on a portion of Lot 1, Block 2, Austin subdivision. Donald, please.
No, Kylie, I'm just the labor.
Oh, you're
Kylie's
okay.
doing- And Kylie, just so you know, Mr. Johnson, your applicant is here with us this afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you, Donald. Good afternoon, commissioners. Item number 1 is titled Austin Subdivision and is located at 5409 53rd Avenue South. The applicant, Josh Johnson with Fargo Basketball Academy, is requesting a conditional use permit for an alternative access plan to reduce on-site parking stalls requirements from 56 parking stalls to 29 parking stalls. The basketball facility is currently 7,044 square feet and is looking to add a 6,900 square foot expansion. The facility is used for a drop-off and pick-up basketball classes, which does not exceed 12 children. The expansion will be used as a skills facility, which will not exceed 8 children at a time. There will also be 2 staff members on site at all times. The applicant has provided a parking study from Traffic Impact Group, LLC, which shows that 29 parking stalls will be sufficient for this site. The City of Fargo's traffic engineer has also reviewed the parking study and agrees with the findings. Based on the conditional use permit criteria of the LDC, staff is recommending approval of the parking reduction with the following conditions on your screen. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Commissioners, any questions for Kylie? Seeing none, hearing none. I invite the applicant to speak if you'd like to on this. Is there any questions for the applicant? No questions for the applicant either. Okay. I open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this? Seeing and hearing none, I close the public comment. Any additional discussion, or are we ready to act? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to follow the recommendations of staff and approve the conditional use permit.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Holtz,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Tassa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Stoffren. Rosenberg,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to item 3. Hearing an application requesting a plat of Bentley Place Third Edition. And this one is Donald.
Good afternoon,
Donald.
Commissioners. Donald Kress from the Department of Planning and Development. Bentley Place Third Edition is located at 3240 Veterans Boulevard. It's currently zoned LC, Limited Commercial. It is just proposed to be a plat. This aerial photo is, since there's so much rapid development in South Fargo, this is a little out of date. We'll look at an updated picture here, but just to locate this Veterans Boulevard, 32nd Avenue South. This adjacent to this property, this is where the property is. On the east side, there's a drive that curves around, a private drive that will provide access for it. This is approximately the property here. Capital Credit Union is here, and these buildings, part of the Eagle Ridge Plaza, are here. Here's a view just from Veterans Boulevard. You're looking east at the vacant lot. This lot has no direct access to Veterans Boulevard. There is a private drive that comes in here where these trucks are parked, and that connects to the drive that is in our earlier picture here where these trucks are parked. And that's how you'll access it from the east side. Again, the plat here shows that this is a negative access easement, which again prevents access from Veterans Boulevard. You'll come in here, come around here. There's a shared access here between the two lots. Again, the zoning is not changing. It's still limited commercial. So that those uses are stated in the limited commercial zone that are eligible for that. I believe the applicant does have one tenant in mind for one of these lots, but again, we're just approving the plat here today. The applicant's representative, Blake Carlson, is with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation, Commissioners. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Donald or staff? Hearing none. I invite the applicant to speak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Blake Carlson here. Very good summary there. Nothing too complicated about this, but available for any questions you may have.
Any questions, Commissioners? Okay, hearing none. I open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this? Hearing none, I close the public comment. Any additional discussion, Commissioners? We ready to act? Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the staff findings.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
And I have a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Schneider,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Tassa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to item 4A. Hearing an application on the zoning change from agricultural to single dwelling residential, Madeline's Meadow, 4th edition. Donald, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So Madeline's Meadows 4th edition. We've been working our way through Madeline's Meadows here, Commissioners, for a little while. Here's the zoning, shows agricultural, and again, the residential and surrounding PI zoning. The parcel south of here, this is 76th Avenue here, this line. Parcel south of here is still zoned agricultural. Just to locate this for you, here's Davies High School, 25th Street South, 73rd Avenue South. You may remember in the last couple of years, you've done Madeline's Meadows first, second, and third, which are all in this area here. Madeline's Meadows third was sort of a fixer plat here a little bit we did back in July, that we actually went to City Commission last night and was approved there. So this continues the theme of residential here in the Madeline's Meadows fourth edition with connectivity to that. Here's, it is literally a cornfield as of yesterday out there. This is 74th Avenue here. You're looking northwest. Here we're in the other corner. We're looking southwest here. This is the existing 73rd under construction. The plat is a big plat, so it's in two pieces here. So I put them together here for you so you can see it a little better in one continuous piece. So here's 73rd, 25th Street. 74th will continue down here. These lots are all SR4 zoned for detached single-family dwellings. This lot here, lot 14 of Block 6, is intended as a public park. Fargo Park District has worked with us. It's a smaller park, but they're going to put a couple of playgrounds in there, so these folks have their own park. And then this lot over here on the west side is intended to be zoned MR1 for some townhome development. The developer Eagle Ridge, John Eunice, here today with us, has had a similar product on many of his projects here. And then beyond this is County Drain 53. So again, we have connectivity here with the adjacent parcel, or the adjacent project that'll continue through to the south here and here, and then 74th will come in here. This property at this moment is not yet annexed. You looked at this annexation, I believe, in August, and it will go to the City Commission on October 19th. So by the time this gets to the City Commission, the property will be annexed. The annexation here got ahead of the plat, which it usually doesn't do, but one of the reasons we wanted this annexation is because the city needs this in relation to revisions of Drain 53 that they're working on with Southeast Cass Water Resources District. So we needed to have the land there, and then the applicant came in and platted it subsequent to that. So again, just pretty much a straightforward plat and zone change here. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report shown on the screen. And again, the applicant, John Eunice from Eagle Ridge Development, is with us this afternoon if you may wish to address the commission. Thank you, commissioners.
All right, any questions for Donald?
Donald,
Yes, ma'am.
have you had any questions or comments from the public regarding the annex or?
Not on this one. We'll make the point here, ma'am, that when we do the notice, not a lot of these are inhabited yet. So we do, notice the surrounding, but there's not a lot of people here. We did have some comments on the earlier Madeline's Meadows third from adjacent owners, but this one we have not had any comments from.
How many homeowners would that have went to?
I don't have that.
Because the one to the north, that's not yet developed.
It's not fully developed. This
Correct.
is, there are houses here, John, these are people living here?
Not yet. The builder owns those.
Okay, builder owns those. And then, of course, the school district here, and then, government entities. So, yeah, there's not a lot of actual existing homeowners, that are adjacent. But that's the way the noticing works for these. So we have a standard distance that we go as prescribed in the ordinance.
I think that's my only concern on this new green, development out south is the last time we approved one is there's not a lot of people living out there to even say whether they don't want that because it's so new.
Well, yes, ma'am, that's a correct observation there. I'd say yes. But again, we'll note that this does largely continue the existing size and theme of development to the north of it, so it's not radically different. So that might be one consideration here. If it were significantly different or all commercial, might be a more of an area of concern.
Okay, any other questions for Donald, or should I invite John up to the podium if people have any questions for John Eunice?
Yeah, John Eunice with Eagle Ridge Development, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. One thing I would point out is that actually our lot sizes on average and on this Madeline's Meadows 4th edition are larger than what we had on average in Madeline's Meadows to the north of it.
Yeah, you can even see that here.
Any questions, commissioners, for John?
John, is there any MR1 in any of these other lots? Or is this the first MR1 building?
There's MR1 as a part of the Madeline's Meadows 3rd edition plat along the drain. And one thing, if you look at the 2007 growth plan, we actually kind of follow the locations that were shown on that for the, we'll call it a little bit higher density than the single family.
Commissioner, yeah, if you, to follow that up for John, if you look on the, in your staff report there, if you have that handy, it shows that this area has both the lower to medium density, which is the SR4, and the medium to higher density, which include the MR1. There could actually be a larger area of MR1, you know, if the developer would have wanted to go that way, but he just stuck to one lot there. So.
Yeah, and last week we did have a meeting with the Golden Valley residents regarding a couple of items on Madeline's Meadows, and we presented this plat to that group of people that we met with. So they even though they may not have been notified through the mail, we did have a meeting, and they were at least shown what we were planning on doing.
Yeah, I was part of that meeting too.
Awesome. I appreciate that, John. It looks, based on the signage, they seem to be selling very fast. I can't remember which lot, but that they were all sold. So, I mean, I am off of 25th, 69th and 25th. So, I mean, we take walks there all the time, and there seems to be a ton of development and a ton of interest in that area. So,
Yeah, we've been fortunate down there so far.
All right, any other questions for John Eunice?
Thank you.
All right, I'll open for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to speak for or against this? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional discussion, or are we ready to act, commissioners? Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval to accept the staff findings.
I have a motion. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
And I have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Sherling,
Yes.
Holtz,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. All right, moving on to item 1 under other items. Plan unit development, final plan for Bentley Place First Edition. Megan.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Agenda item E.1 is Bentley Place First Edition, which is located at 5601 33rd Avenue South, which is Lot 6, Block 1 of Bentley Place First Edition. And this is an entitlement requested for a planned unit development final plan, and applicant John Eunice is here should you have any questions. Just a little bit of context here. Item number 3 that you just heard earlier in your agenda, Bentley Place 3rd, is right here next door to the subject property right here. And this shows an aerial view. And in the next slide, I'll show some images where they were taken from the intersection of Cedar Parkway South and 33rd Avenue South. This top one is looking northwest. This is buildings part of Eagle Ridge Development, and the south image is just looking north on Cedar Parkway. The Planning Commission reviewed this project in February, earlier this year of 2020, so this project might look familiar to you. And on March 23rd, 2020, the City Commission approved a zoning map amendment from LC with a CO to LC with a PUD overlay, along with a master land use plan. The PUD zoning overlay and master land use plan are the first 2 steps in a 3-step process for the PUD approval, and the final plan is the last step. And the purpose of the PUD final plan is to confirm that the final development plans are consistent with the intent and layout of the PUD master land use plan, and copies of both of these are attached and also on the screen. The applicant, up on your screen right now, is the PUD Master Land Use Plan. And on your screen, here's the final plan. You'll notice that it's just these two buildings on the west side. Additional plans or phases will come to the Planning Commission as they come in to our office. So the applicant has submitted for a portion of the project as shown, and will come back to your review in future phases by the Planning Commission. The applicant also will need to submit for a building permit, where all review departments will review the plans in compliance with their respective codes as well. And as a reminder, this is not a public hearing item. So staff finds that all criteria are met and is recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Megan? So it's not open to the public. So is this a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay. See, no questions. I need a motion, please.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if you'd like to open it to the applicant.
Okay, I mean, does the applicant wish to speak? Does anybody have? Okay, any questions for John Eunice?
I have a question.
Yes.
John, what's the plan now? I mean, from February to now, I mean, I know we've changed, but.
If you compare the two plans, the one that you guys saw in February to what you saw now, they are substantially similar. The phasing plan that we're looking at, this first phase is those two buildings on the west side of the property, which is what we were intending. The size of the buildings, the number of apartment units and commercial space, and also the plaza area between the two buildings are all substantially similar. So I would say, other than just minor massaging that happens with any plan as it kind of works its way down the pipeline, other than that, there weren't really any drastic changes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. It's kind of just a general question, but in the two projects that we've just been talking about, I noticed the lighting is it similar, or I'm just referencing that in some of the residential neighborhoods where there's single family dwellings, then in other parts of the country there are like street or lamps in the post lamps in the front of properties so that the sky remains dark up above. And then I noticed in the second one where there's a lot of apartment buildings that the lights are more highly elevated. I don't know exactly what they're called. But do you have any input into what kind of lighting goes into these developments?
Yeah, so typically, I think if you look back, there used to be a lot more open top street lights, but now as technology's gotten better with LED lighting and they can broadcast further from those lights, you're seeing a lot of kind of narrower profile top lights. So if you actually look at our office buildings, which are immediately to the west, those all shine completely down onto the parking lot and do not shoot up into the air. And we would have similar lighting to that. That's what we've been using as a standard for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's really an important point in that, there can be complaints too from people who said, well, there never was anything here before and we loved walking here. The night sky was so beautiful. And to lose the night sky is a huge thing. So I'm just wondering, you're probably not the right person to ask, but how that's progressing in the newer developments.
Well, one thing I would say as we go in for permit, one of the boxes that we have to check is a photometric study that shows the amount of light and how much it actually goes beyond our property, and there's limits within the code in terms of how much candle feet of light can actually be adjacent to the neighbors. So we, as a part of the whole process, we go through and submit a lighting study and show exactly how much light is going on our site and then how it's not affecting neighboring properties.
Very good. So have you been able to notice the changes in those policies over the period of time you've been in development?
As long as I can remember, we've had the photometric studies as a part of our permitting process. So I can't speak to before those were required, but I know we have been following those on all of our projects.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for John? Okay, hearing none. All right. Now I'll go into any further discussion, or are we ready to act?
I'd like to make a recommendation to accept the findings of staff.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Is this roll call? Okay, it is a roll call vote. Roll call vote, please.
Tossa,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Holtz,
Aye.
Sherling,
Yes.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to item 2, appeal of an administrative decision to approve a residential protection standard waiver on a property located at 1404 12th Avenue North.
Good afternoon. Item E2, Kirkham Second Edition, is an appeal of an administrative decision to approve a residential protection standards waiver. The applicant, Red Architecture, is requesting a waiver to a residential protection standard that requires a landscape buffer and a 10-foot parking setback on the property located at 1404 12th Avenue North. An administrative decision was made by the city planner to grant the requested waiver. However, a planning commissioner objected to the granting of the waiver and is appealing the decision to the planning commission. The subject property owner, Northland Educators Federal Credit Union, is currently reconstructing the existing credit union. This phase of construction is in proximity of an SR zoning district. Therefore, the property must conform to the residential protection standards of the LDC. Rhett Architecture submitted an application in September of 2020 for a waiver for the residential protection standards, which would require a landscape buffer and a 10-foot parking setback along a portion of the property where the lot lines are adjacent to residential zoning districts. This landscape buffer and parking setback would be required along the southern lot line where the property abuts a property that is zoned SR3. The applicant has proposed to provide a 10-foot tall opaque fence along the southern property line to provide buffering along the parking stalls on the south end of the property. Due to the constraints of the existing site, the applicant would be unable to meet the required parking on site if they were required to do the landscaping buffer and 10-foot parking setback. Staff finds that the waiver is appropriate and that the opaque fence will screen the proposed parking spaces from the SR property to the south. Staff is recommending approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And Kylie, Mr. Fisness is here in person.
Perfect, and Rhett can answer any questions you may have as well.
Okay, I'll open it up to questions for either Kylie or Rhett. Any questions, commissioners?
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to make a comment. It is. Okay, well, the way that I'm looking at this project has to do with the assault on the neighborhood that's been underway for a long time, the Roosevelt neighborhood. And they have been trying to reclaim their neighborhood, or at least hang on to as much as they have. And so I would be in opposition to granting this this application, because I think that whoever goes into that neighborhood in the future needs to take into account that it is primarily a residential neighborhood, and that they should accommodate the needs of the citizens.
Any other?
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. So what is there now along that southern edge? I see there's a parking lot, and what's the barrier now? Am I misunderstanding?
From the aerial image, it appears that there currently is a fence. Maybe Rhett, you might know that a little bit better than I do.
Kylie, we got a photo up here for the commissioners.
Oh.
Commissioner Sherling, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I took these pictures, I think yesterday. So this apparently is an existing fence here. There's a temporary kind of mobile home style trailer here that they're using for a temporary bank or temporary facility. So this is Barrett Street I'm standing on here. This is the property. There's this sort of cedar stockade fence coming up here. Apparently there's nothing in this blank space, and then this, I would imagine, is the credit union's fence. I don't know for sure. There's a credit union sign on there. So Mr. Fismus, I believe, could give you more detail. Rhett, does this help you here?
There's an existing 6-foot opaque fence, and we would be replacing that with a new one.
So that would be from the outside looking in, that would be the only change. I just want to understand, and you're recommending you'd have to have the buffer because of the changes, and that's the only reason.
Correct, because they are redeveloping the site, they would have to come into conformance with the code as it is currently written. And so basically they're just asking to have that fence in lieu of the landscape buffer and the 10-foot parking setback.
So are there any requirements on the quality of the fence? Because you can see as a fence gets older, it can get pretty ragged looking. What's the requirement going forward?
I would say currently there isn't a requirement on the fence, but that's something that we can add on to it.
I mean, but personally, I don't see a problem with a fence, but I could see a problem with an old fence if it started to sag and not look good. If there's some beautiful decorative fences that could go up, but maybe that's more than they want to put into it.
I can just speak, the credit union is, their goal is upgrading their property. And so while there's already an existing opaque fence, their desire is to replace that with something new and fresh that they'd be able to match the quality of the new building that's being constructed. So the planning department's welcome to write the rules, and we'll follow them.
Mary, I can comment on the quality of the fence issue. There is somebody, if a complaint is filed by a neighbor about the condition of a fence, there is somebody with the city that goes out and looks at those. I have had experience with another project that somebody actually had done just that, and a fence was. They basically said either get it compliant or take it down in that case. But there is a process, and it goes through the not the engineering department, but the inspections department. So there is a way to correct those kind of conditions if it would ever exist. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, hearing no other additional discussion, are we ready to act? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to accept the staff findings.
I have a motion. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Holtz, Shirley,
Yes.
Morgan,
No.
Schneider,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 3. FM MetroCog to introduce an initiation of the Fargo Transportation Plan. I think Cindy is doing this one remote.
I am. Aaron,
Welcome,
do you
Cindy.
want to open it up or should I just go ahead?
I can say a quick few words if you'd like. Thanks for being with us here today, Cindy, and good afternoon, Planning Commission. Yeah, I guess as outlined in the meeting packet there, we've got Cindy Gray on the phone with us here on the video conference here today, Executive Director of MetroCog, to provide an overview of a Fargo transportation plan that MetroCog is slated to undertake beginning in early 2021. And in some conversations between city staff and MetroCog staff, we thought it would be good to get this on the agenda in order to introduce the topic to you all, and then to hear some feedback, hear some of your comments, questions, concerns, in order to help shape the overall scope of that study. MetroCog staff is currently working to develop that scope of work, and so your feedback here today is important to kind of help inform that discussion. I think, not to get too far into things, but I think the way that staff is really looking at this Fargo transportation plan is as a way to kind of help operationalize some of the existing transportation policy as it relates to some more of our day-to-day decision making, both in terms of long-range planning decisions as well as the actual design decisions as projects get implemented, and as they all interrelate with land use decisions and some of your subdivision conversations that you all see on a monthly basis as well. So I think with that, I can hand things off to Cindy Gray with MetroCog, and Cindy, I've got your PowerPoint pulled up here, and I can run the slides for you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Planning Commission and others at the meeting today. I was first presented with the idea of a Fargo transportation plan at a meeting this past winter with Jeremy and Brenda and Nicole and Aaron. And since then, we did include it in our budget for our 2021 Unified Planning Work Program, and have subsequently had a chance to have a conversation with planning and engineering about what they hope to achieve out of this project. And so now we are in the process of writing a request for proposals for this project, and Michael Maddox is working on that, and we'll be submitting that soon to staff for feedback. So I'll just quickly outline what is envisioned for this project. So next slide, please, Aaron. Thank you. So what are the expectations of this project and how will it be used? In talking with city staff, they would really like this project to be not just a repeat of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, not just a microscopic view of that, but more of a playbook for everyday use. So we would be looking at the operations, day-to-day operations, like Aaron said, and the facilities that the city is responsible for, and using this as a guide for development review and new facilities associated with those developments, and also for redevelopment and reconstruction of existing facilities. So all those different phases of development and redevelopment and reconstruction. Next. And the idea would be that this plan would consolidate policies and practices, maybe some standards that are already out there, and pull together citywide and extraterritorial policies and practices into one go-to document. So staff and the development community, Planning Commission has guidance on some of these things that have caused a lot of discussion and a lot of sometimes hand-wringing in the past and over how to proceed with things. We also want to acknowledge all the great things about Go 2030 and incorporate those principles and improve consistency in the way some of the terms are used in Go 2030. So when we talked about that, the term solidifying the nomenclature of that plan. So taking some of the terms that are used in there and working that into practical guidance as to how to implement those. And then providing guidance for subdivision review, some of the processes and principles that would go into those. And then the next item is tying that to the LDC diagnostic analysis. And I said LDS, but what that's supposed to say is the Land Development Code diagnostic analysis that you've already had done, and taking some of the guidance from that. Next slide. So what exactly will the plan address? So street types is one of the main things we would be talking about. We'd be looking at a more fine-grained classification of streets, looking at the design features of those streets, looking at the intersection types that the city is comfortable using in different situations, all the different types of traffic control and intersection configurations, and looking at which ones you want to keep in your toolbox and where you would be most comfortable using those. What are the issues with them in terms of maintenance and upkeep and that type of thing. We would be looking at alternatives to some of the section line roadways where obstacles exist. So currently you've got situations like I-29 running down a section line corridor. So you have, the city has created other corridors that sort of take the place of that for more local access, and corridors like 42nd Street. What are your policies in terms of continuing those corridors, and how do you want to treat those? 25th Street is another example, because when you get south of the existing development, you run into the Wild Rice River. So how do you want to handle that? 88th Avenue is another example. When you get to that point, how do you want to extend that corridor, given that it also will terminate potentially at the Wild Rice River? And so there are other examples of this where some of those issues should be discussed and some policies developed to work those out. Cross sections for different road types would also be included. So unlike my PowerPoint presentation, I apologize, it's all words, we would be looking at having a lot of visual components, a lot of graphics and illustrations and renderings in this document, and providing a lot of guidance that way. And on-street parking would be part of that whole cross-section discussion. Where do you want to have on-street parking? Where is it most appropriate? And where is it not appropriate? So another big issue ends up being connectivity. And I listed drain crossings here, but really it's not just drain crossings. It's railroads, it's interstates, and maybe even other barriers that might require connectivity discussions. And so it's in more the big picture. And then when you get into the smaller elements of your development, like neighborhood street connectivity, cul-de-sacs, do you want the same policies for vehicles as you have for bicycles and pedestrians, or are there other accommodations that can be made for connectivity? So next slide. And then bicycle and pedestrian features is, sure.
Oh, okay. This is something that I'm sure has come up a million times, but there's been discussion about the one-ways, and then also discussion about how to get people from South Fargo up to NDSU. And of course, we've had 25th Street that's been successful on the south side, but when you get to the north side, you eventually run into the tracks. And it's just a matter of a few feet before you get to NDSU, but still, it's a blockage. How much have you discussed that over the years?
Over the years, I can tell you, I believe it's 42nd Street that was discussed as potentially grade separating with the railroad north of Main Avenue. That was discussed at one time. 25th Street on the north side, that hasn't been discussed. I don't recall in 20 some years of working in this community, extending 25th Street farther to the north. I don't recall that having been discussed. I know there have been things like improving east-west access to downtown through things like some of the east-west avenues grade separating with I-29, improved access to the former, or the Roger Maris Cancer Center at Sanford, that type of thing. But, you know, all those things, those kinds of opportunities would exist to look at as part of this study. As far as the one-way pair is concerned, we did specifically talk about that, MetroCog did with your planning and engineering staff. And I think we would require, you know, another couple $100,000 of funding to specifically study that with this. I think it needs to be a separate study. And I think that it's going to be a lot more operational focused in terms of traffic operations and alternative routes and that type of thing, and looking at impacts to other corridors, whereas this plan is meant to be more policy and guidance type of thing. But I think we can build a case for studying that with this plan.
Thank you.
Certainly. In terms of bicycle and pedestrian features, we would want to look at features like regional greenways and other tie-ins with the update of the bike and ped plan. That will be going on at the same time. So over the course of 2021, we'll also be looking at updating that plan, and that will offer a lot of opportunities for this plan to inform that process and for that to inform this process. So there's a lot of good tie-ins that we can take advantage of there. And even though, in terms of transit, even though we don't want this plan to duplicate work of the transit development plan or other transit studies that have been done, we do want to look at what are the best practices in terms of building facilities for transit as part of the street cross-section. And so we'd want to take a look at that and incorporate any guidance into the document that we can. And then also balancing between user benefits and ongoing maintenance and public works concerns. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we know people love to have, and they like the look of them, they like the way they're used, but it is important to take the consideration of the cost and the time and the equipment involved in maintaining those, and kind of looking at what's the right balance. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into who all is involved. Thank you, Erin. And, you know, we also, when we think about these plans, we really want to focus on neighborhoods and where we live, but we also have to recognize that a big part of our community is our economy and the industry aspect of that. And so how do the needs of these areas vary from neighborhoods? Where do they overlap, and how do we deal with that? Workforce access to jobs. You know, many of you have heard over and over again about the difficulty of providing transit service to the industrial park, and how can we deal with that? So balancing those freight needs with access to jobs and affordability of transit. Next slide. Guidance on project prioritization. Staff has talked about how they do not want to repeat what's in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan as far as looking at revenues and costs of projects and things like that. That's not the intent of this. So what we would do is provide guidance on how to prioritize projects from the perspective of sustainability and timing relative to development or redevelopment, and how and where can public improvements help lead or incentivize private development. So many of you remember how the role that Broadway played in helping to encourage and incent redevelopment downtown. And so looking at examples like that, I mean, Main Avenue is probably going to be another one. So are there other places where that might happen? Next. And in terms of our vision for the plan, we really want to use a lot of maps. We want to tie the city's geography to the policies and practices of the plan, have it be very illustrative with renderings and graphics and vignettes that really show what's being talked about, not make you read a bunch of words. And also in terms of the process, we want that to be very transparent. And you as planning commissioners would be very heavily involved in that. Next slide. So how can we, another one of the things that we talked about was how can we gather the most recent land use planning information as a basis for this plan. And there's been a lot of good work done in the land use planning arena since the 2007 land use plan was done. And one of those efforts that's going on right now is the core neighborhood plans, and also the Northwest Metro Transportation Plan, which you will learn more about in the near future as part of an upcoming brown bag, hopefully. And then the Southwest Metro Transportation Plan that was done a few years ago. And then we've had a couple of corridor studies that have happened since then, 76th and Veterans, that have built upon that Southwest Metro land use planning that was done. You have your downtown master plan and your 2007 plan, and I may even be missing one or two here, but I think this is the bulk of them. Can we consolidate all that good, more recent planning work to serve as kind of a guide for this transportation plan that we're going to be working on? Next slide. And I mentioned who will be involved in this. So we really want to have a high level of involvement from the Planning Commission. You all are very involved in terms of some hands-on discussions about the details of development review. And so we want to have frequent opportunities to touch base with you about different elements of this plan. And so that when it's done, you're very familiar with it and you've had a lot of input into it. And so that's part of a big part of the public engagement process. In fact, that's probably the biggest part is. And then we also want to involve key staff from city departments, planning and engineering, public works, public health. We have Kim Lepetsky from your public health department, who's on our bike and pedestrian committee. So she's very plugged into that. And then the fire department also has a lot to say when it comes to transportation system. Next slide. And so what kind of a team will we be looking for with this? In terms of a consultant team, we are looking for a team that would be very multidisciplinary. We want a well-rounded both traffic engineering and planning team, heavy knowledge of bike and pedestrian and transit facilities, especially related to our climate. And then both engineering and planning agreed that the consultants should have a lot of great hands-on actual complete streets design experience so that they understand the results. They understand the need for some level of flexibility and adaptability, and they understand our climate and the multifaceted considerations that we need to incorporate into this. Next. And so as the outcome, we want a product that will help guide decision-making, both at the staff level and at the Planning Commission level, and City Commission as well. Guide internal discussions and the work that's done with developers, the months and weeks of work that is done with working with developers on their proposals before you all ever even see those proposals. And then understanding the policies and the financial implications of those and what is ultimately sustainable and desirable moving forward. So I know that was a lot, but if you have other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them, and your staff can do that as well.
Thank you, Cindy. So I think with that, like Cindy mentioned, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have now. And like I mentioned at the onset here, we would welcome any feedback you have at this point. Again, as Cindy mentioned, I think this will be a kind of back and forth process from now until the end of the project. So, thank you.
Cindy, maybe one quick question. Being that we've got West Fargo, Horace, and Moorhead, you can't look at Fargo in isolation. I mean, I know this goes back to those other transportation plans that we were even talking about, I think, at our last meeting in MetroCog. Does this help guide? You know, we've been talking about river crossings. We've been talking about other things in different other meetings. Can you avoid not bringing in the other cities into the picture?
Well, just by the nature of MetroCog, you know, when we work with our Transportation Technical Committee, we do get input from our neighboring jurisdictions. However, I think that, you know, there are instances of projects like this one where it's specific to your jurisdiction. And of course, we have to take into consideration the big picture things like potential river crossings or streets that land on your boundary, and consider how your policies and practices compare with neighboring jurisdictions, just from the standpoint of, you know, what developers are used to in terms of working with one city versus another. But I do think it's important also for you as a city to have your policies and your priorities and your guidelines. And I think this needs to be Fargo focused. It definitely needs to be cognizant and aware of the other jurisdictions and recognize that it, you know, you're part of a bigger region. But I think there's benefit to having a document that just looks at Fargo and what you as a city want to achieve.
Thank you. Any other questions for Cindy? Well, thank you, Cindy. We appreciate the update.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Let's see. I think maybe coming back to our, do we need to, are we looking for some a motion of support on this or anything, or just an update?
Nope, no action, just any comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to take a minute now to kind of recap, and this presentation by Cindy would be maybe a good example of what maybe we could be doing. I don't know, Mark, if you want to kind of lead this discussion, or you want me to lead the discussion on how we want to maybe handle brown bags in the future. I'd like us to take a few minutes and just kind of get the feel of the commissioners, because I know staff is frustrated when we have a brown bag and the attendance. You know, we do those normally from like 11:30 to 1 or 11 to 1 or whatever. And today was a good example. It's 4 o'clock right now, and we just had a short presentation. So I mean, is it when we have meetings that we know are going to run in that 45-minute range, would it be beneficial to host them while we're here, so that I want to say we kind of have a captive audience and we impact more people? I'd like a little discussion from the commissioners on what your thoughts are on these, you know, on these brown bags. I mean, essentially, we need to be mini brown bags, but they'd be on the same day as our planning commission meeting. Any thoughts?
No, I don't have any additional thoughts on that. I guess, you know, the planning department's prepared and willing to do anything that helps, you know, educate everybody more and helps everyone get a better understanding of what the projects that are coming up and the projects that might need approval for in the future. And, you know, if there's a different schedule or a different format or something that maybe is a little bit easier for everyone to work with, we're interested in hearing that. You know, I think when we're talking the results of the Land Development Code diagnostic, I think there's going to be some items that are going to be discussed in there that it wouldn't hurt us to have some refreshers on. You know, we have a UMU zoning district and a DMU zoning district that really is formatted completely different than all the rest of our zoning districts, and why is it that way versus how the other ones are, and what we really want to see in the future as we go ahead with some possible text amendments, if we do text amendments at all. We've sometimes struggled a little bit with the difference between conditional use permits, planned unit developments, alternative access plans. What are those and why do we use them? And is that a format that we want to use in the future? You know, so there are a lot of topics to discuss, including periodic transportation plans, corridor studies, work plan items. You know, there's quite a bit to talk about, and I think the city commission is becoming a little bit more engaged as far as the brown bag idea amongst them, in order to help understand sort of where we're going and what we're doing. But I guess it's up to the planning commission to maybe talk about what a schedule would look like. Are we interested in doing that? If we are interested, what topics are we interested in doing? And do you have any more with that, Commissioner Gunkelman?
Well, I was thinking maybe a little bit of a consensus, maybe tonight if we could, or this afternoon, on what would be a best time to try to do these. You know, not too long ago, we moved the meeting time for the planning commission from 4 o'clock to 3 o'clock, which was good, because sometimes we were running into, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. But if I think, first of all, I think we have a fairly young commission right now. And I think a lot of the discussion, at least from my years here, that would be, I think always it's good to get updated from myself, but I think also for other people to understand what we're going to maybe see in the land development diagnostic, first of all. And I think maybe tonight, just if nothing else, a consensus for the planning department's benefit to say, what is a good time to host these? If we know we're going to have a short meeting, like, again, we've had the last probably 4 or 5 months, we've had fairly short meetings. Do you mentally, picture a 2-hour window for this meeting? And so if we would be done by 5 o'clock or something, is it a good time to host it while we're here? Or does it play to do it with a brown bag and lunch? With the idea that we're going to try to get more commissioners to attend those. So I think I'd like a little discussion amongst the commissioners. Yeah.
I can just weigh in on my thoughts. You kind of got to them a little bit, but the 3 o'clock planning commission meetings, I kind of book it out till 5. And so, going back to work at 4:30 doesn't always happen. Don't tell everybody that, but so I book my schedule out till 5 on these. So if we have extra time, I think it's a good time to utilize it. That said, I am also a fan of brown bags, and maybe now that everybody's comfortable with virtual, we don't necessarily have to have something that's more staff intensive where they have to get food in the room and everything. We could just do a virtual brown bags too. If that helps out staff load at all.
I agree with that. I enjoy listening to the conversation. I think I retain it a lot better than just skimming over printed material. And seeing the presenters and hearing what they have to say is important to me. There are other people that have come to really like the Zoom approach. And when they may say, well, I don't know if I have enough time, they could say, well, I can watch it on Zoom or become involved or watch it later. But my question is do the brown bags, are they only the planning commissioners and planning staff?
They can be structured in any way that we would like. I know sometimes there's topics that both commissioners and planning commissioners are interested in, And during those, we'll advertise that there possibly may be a quorum at the city commission level.
I think that would make it a little more interesting and maybe stimulating for those attending. I think I want to, oh, there. Yeah, and maybe it would be easier for some people to make time for them. And that way they could be logged in and be part of the discussion, but they wouldn't actually have to get here from some other location.
I'm beginning to have a very, very big dislike for virtual because of the fact that people are multitasking and you don't get the discussion. I'll be honest with you, everybody, that even at these planning commission meetings without everybody being able to attend, we don't get the discussion that we normally get when we're in person. Now, again, a year from now, that will probably be reality again. And maybe we have to address things the way we do, but there's too little discussion when you're doing virtual. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are, but it is, I don't know.
So, John?
Yes.
I thought what you did today was great. You knew it was going to be a short meeting and you had something important to share, and I think it works just great the way you did it today. I think it's important to be respectful of everybody's time, not only the commissioners, but the staff's time. So I think you might lose the audience if it just became kind of a continuing ed, fluffy, interesting show, but are people going to really hang around for 2 hours for a meeting that could have been accomplished in 45 minutes? I would, think that an hour and a half would be plenty. I think today was great. But I like the idea of doing a virtual brown bag. I think that works well. And I think people are getting more comfortable with participating in virtual meetings. I think it's going to be the wave of the future, like it or not.
My question, though, back to you touched on a few things, but the question would be, if we didn't do it, say, at our normal meeting time, would people then take an hour and a half to go to normally our brown bags have ran an hour to an hour and a half. Would they make the time to go to them? I think that was my only reason to tie it to people's time and staff time, was the fact that due to the fact that our meetings have been shorter, is it better use of people's time to make one trip here, say from 3 to 5, than to come back again at a noon meeting 2 weeks later? Now again, there are certain topics that I think a brown bag would be great, and maybe when we get into the LDC diagnostic, when we go through their findings, we maybe are going to have to do a brown bag, just do it at a time. But on short, I'm just throwing this out for discussion because I'll make time either way because I'm the chair, and I'll be there. But I was just trying to think of people's what the commissioners' wishes are as far as best use of your times is all.
I agree with John. I like the physical aspect of attending a meeting and being with people in the discussion. But there are other people who may have becoming more comfortable with the virtual. So I think there could be a combination of the two, couldn't there?
Oh, I think we're going to have this mode of operation for the next, well, and like Mary said, some of these will probably become the future, and others not.
Well, one of the things they're saying now is a lot of people who have been working from home don't want to go back to driving to work. They want to work from home and they want to continue doing that. And I've heard people say, well, I used to have to drive down to Minneapolis for a meeting once a week, and now I don't have to do all that driving, and it's so much more comfortable. And I wouldn't say I'm a proponent of virtual meetings, but I think a combination of the two would probably work for a lot of people, especially if they got the information that it's really important information for them to have.
a lot of meetings that would be otherwise missed, people are being able to attend. You know, if you're out of town or whatever, you can, and in the past, oftentimes people would call in, but now that we've had to set all of these up, it's just going to be pretty seamless in the future. But if you were not having good attendance at the brown bags in the past, I don't know that, you know, that is necessarily going to change in the future. So I do like the idea of having, you know, not an hour of presentations, but today I thought was just perfect.
Well, and maybe we address when staff gets to know fairly early, we already kind of know the items that are going to be on next month's agenda. So maybe when we know we have a shorter agenda, we try to schedule in some of these things that from their standpoint, they're going to kind of have to be prepared for some of these things, and maybe we start having them put together a kind of a series of many education sessions, you might call them, with the idea of, if we do have a shorter meeting, that maybe have a brown bag or whatever we're going to call it, our continuing education for our degrees. And maybe we just go at it that way.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we're kind of talking about two separate things in my mind. Is the first is we got to talk about the LDC and what we're doing, and I think we have to be able to get some time in that. I mean, that's our Bible, and we're making some drastic changes to it. I mean, I think every meeting I've been at, we've done a parking adjustment for every time. I mean, something's got to get fixed with this so that people kind of know what we're doing. We're constantly making changes to parking, which is, we have to do it. I mean, we can't not approve these things, but there's got to be some improvements of the system. And I mean, I'm a realtor. I've done several developments, and I still don't know what's going on half the time, and relying on staff, which is important. But I think it's helpful that we really understand where we're going with the LDC. And then the second thing with the brown bags, you know, I think if we were able to look at it maybe on a quarterly basis for certain things that are important to the community or things that are coming, so there's not a stress to the staff on that part, but then look at our schedule, and if we have an availability of 15, 20 minutes to catch up on something or do something. But I think we need to try to squeeze in, at least in the next few meetings for whatever the next 6 months, to try to, you know, pick apart this LDC and have pieces and parts of it ready to go to present. And even if we don't get it done here, have them do it, you know, have the team just do it remotely. I mean, just tape it and put it on something if we can't get it done. But we really need to, as a group, make sure we're comfortable with what's coming, because that's the Bible for the next, whatever, 10 years. You know, and we
for almost 20 years.
Yeah, or whatever it may be.
22 years, or whatever it is.
Hopefully, we'll be updating it and improving it more regularly than we did. But
right.
I mean, this is a major undertaking, and it's going to impact, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 20 years. So I think it's pretty important that we need to spend some time. I'm not advocating that we spend and, you know, we stay here until 5:30 every time, but we definitely, I think if the schedule continues, which it probably will for at least a few more months with just development and our situation with COVID-19, that we should squeeze some time in to at least go over some of the important aspects.
Well, I kind of get the feeling that if we can get something accomplished in a short, like mini sessions after the planning meeting, and then Rocky and I meet with Donald and Mark and Nicole every month before this meeting, and why don't we kind of come back with some guidelines of what we think, or some ideas on what we think the next few months could look like. Does that sound acceptable, Mark?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay. Any further discussion? We can't have virtual dinner here, so, you know, We've only had one planning commission in my history where we had dinner in the middle of it, but. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.